Hello. Welcome.
Sorry,
how do I begin these? Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar. I just need a really quick wee-wee, then we'll crack on.
I need to do a wee-wee here.
I did my wee-wee.
Hello and welcome back to Off Radar, Series 4, would you believe? I am James Smith and I am joined by James Eatock.
Hello.
And Neil Brock.
Buongiorno.
Oh, nice little Italian-ness there.
See what I did there?
Very clever.
Yeah.
And me and Eatock call Neil Nige, just for the sake of this podcast. Today...
Sounds ridiculous every time.
It does,
anyway.
but we've got to say it. Today we're talking about Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, and that is actually the title of the film, which came out in 2022, right at the end, just before Christmas. Well, obviously, it's a new film, so we haven't seen this, so we're all watching this for the first time, right?
Oh no, I saw this 3 years ago.
But I'm actually Pinocchio, so I was...
You might have seen a Pinocchio 3 years ago, because there's been plenty of them.
Well, I think that's why this film had the director's name attached to it as the title, because you had Disney's live-action Pinocchio that came out, was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, I think it was actually 2022, yeah. So Robert Zemeckis
Bobby Zemeckis and with...
Bobby Zemeckis. I don't know why I love the Bobby Zemeckis.
Like Bobby for me. Bobby. Yeah, and obviously had Tom Hanks in, and that film has got absolutely panned. I've not seen it, but
I've just seen a few reviews, and it's like I'll avoid that, like I avoid COVID.
But anyway, so yeah, this one, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, not live action but stop motion, and it's written by Guillermo del Toro and Patrick McHale. It's directed by him and also Mark Gustafson.
That's how they pronounce it in Stephen.
Gustafson. And yeah, voicing, we've got a lot of well-known voices, and it's funny, when I watched the film, like, there's only a couple that stood out for me until you go away and look at the list. So you've got Gregory Man, who is a young boy that voices Pinocchio, Ewan McGregor, which has got the most distinctive voice out of anyone.
What I loved about that is I watched this with my partner, and after 1 hour and like 45 minutes, she was like, "Is that Ewan McGregor's voice?" And I'm like, how did you not notice at any point?
It's like, he's got such a distinctive voice.
Well, in this film, he's literally just... I'm Ewan McGregor. He's just talking.
Yeah,
there's no
like
he is.
I'm now a cricket.
Look at me, Sebastian the
and
cricket.
Then you've got David Bradley, who does Geppetto, and then a whole host who I'll quickly list. You've got Ron Perlman, John Turturro, Finn Wolfhard, who is that kid out of Stranger Things.
Oh yes,
Christopher Waltz, Tilda Swinton.
I clocked Waltz about 20 minutes into his performance. There's one line he said, and I was like, oh, there's that kind of that twang to his voice. I was like, oh, there's Christopher Waltz.
I couldn't pick it, and like his voice just didn't really, for me, match the actual character he was playing, and so I found it really like discombobulating, I suppose.
And then the most surprising
spoiler,
the most surprising one of all was Cate Blanchett as the monkey, which the kind of crazy monkey thing, and I was like, what?
She was desperate to do this film, so she said she was doing shooting another film at the time, and obviously this came up, and she was very, very interested in being involved, and said, it was while she was doing Nightmare Alley, in fact, and said to the director, look, I would literally play a pencil for you? And he said, the only role we've got left is this monkey. And she was like, sold. And that's the reason why Cate Blanchett plays a monkey.
And it's, you would not recognise her voice. So this is a film I picked, and a little rough rundown of the story. So the film is set in fascist Italy during the kind of interwar period between World War I and World War II. The actual years are like a little bit kind of hazy. You don't actually know quite when, but to be honest, that's probably not relevant. Geppetto is a carpenter who loses his son Carlo when a bomb hits their church and kills him. And then, dealing with his grief, Geppetto drunkenly chops down an old tree and rashly creates a puppet, which is called Pinocchio. A blue spirit brings this puppet to life, and at first Geppetto kind of casts him away while Pinocchio fights for his place in Geppetto's heart, but also his place in this kind of dark and scary world. And like the original story, there are a few things that kind of happen in the original story, like it goes off to the circus, and then after that kind of rather bizarrely gets prepped for war because he can't die. And I don't think I'll go into like the story in depth because, you know, everyone knows this story pretty well, but it's a story about, you know, grief, death, a story about acceptance, and a story about love. And essentially it's Guillermo del Toro's kind of take on this story. And the original story, I should say, was written in 1883, which I didn't realise, which obviously most people know for the Disney film that came out in 1940, I think it was.
I want to tell you a story. It's a story you may think you know, but you don't.
Over there! What is that?
Papa! It speaks!
He's just a puppet!
No, I'm not. I'm a real boy!
So it's Guillermo's kind of take on it, and he's become, well, a bit of an auteur, I would say, like with, I don't know if you guys have seen many of his films, but I went through a bit of a stage of like really liking his work. So Pan's Labyrinth is like potentially one of my favourites, but he also did a film called Devil's Backbone, which was also related to this kind of, you know, like war, and they, like all three of these films have very similar undertones, which is quite interesting.
Oh, right.
But I think the biggest thing that we should point out when we watch this film is, like I said, it's stop motion, so not CGI. And I guess we've become so used to, you know, animation and that, like, especially with the Disney Zemerix one. But the stop motion and the set design is all real and authentic, and it's beautiful. You know, there's no, like getting away from that.
As a fan of animation, this film is like stunning. I remember seeing a bunch of, this is like the early 90s when I was big into, you know, the process of animation and discovering it. There was a system called Puppetoons that was like pre-World War II. It was kind of like in stark contrast to Disney's cell animation. So Disney were doing all their cell animated films, and this system was created. I forget the animator who created this system called Puppetoons, and they thought it was going to be like the next big thing, where stop motion, which was Puppetoons, stop motion becomes the next big form of, you know, how to tell stories in animation form. But World War II happened, and it kind of died a death, and then by the time World War II was over, Disney were kind of dominating with their cell animation. So Puppetoons is, if you go on, like, I'm sure there's no doubt there's a Wikipedia entry all about it, but it's fascinating. So to see this film was just like, oh wow, this is kind of that, you know, don't get me wrong, stop motion's been done for, you know, ever since, but to this level, like,
it's so far different than something like Wallace and Gromit, which is my first reference to stop motion, because, you know, that's obviously kind of been done, but also carried on being done over the last 20 years, and they've made new films. So for this to kind of come out of nowhere, but I should say I also watched the documentary on Netflix that goes with this film, which you guys should definitely watch. Maybe I should have told you to watch it before. But like a lot of the design that they did was in Mexico, so a lot of the set design and stuff like that. So they kind of had totally different places where they would do it and then kind of bring it all together.
I mean, like the sprawling vistas. I mean, the opening moments of the film when you see Geppetto's relationship with his son is so... It's an incredible example of visual world building because you immediately get the feel of the town, the kind
those
of...
little Italian towns that are also picturesque.
But it's incredible. There's like one bit where they're kind of going over the hill and in the distance you see this Italian town and like this mount. It's incredible. I'm like, I started questioning like how much, I'm sure computers were involved to a degree because I'm presuming they have to remove certain things of these stop motions to keep...
Yeah, exactly, like kind of green screen bits kind of on the puppets and then they would like key certain moments out. However, I think like, you know, most of the puppetry and set design is pretty authentic. Like,
oh, I've no doubt about that. It's a real... It sounds like a fucking cliche, but it's... Looking at this film, it's like a... Straight from the off, it's like a technical masterpiece. It's so well done visually, and like I say, the opening scene with Geppetto and his son I thought was beautiful.
Papa!
Yes?
Guess what I saw?
What?
Yes!
I have no idea.
I saw some planes!
Oh, did you? Good.
What is it you're making this time, Papa?
Yes.
A soldier?
No.
A magician? A witch?
No. You have to wait and see, Carlo. All good things require patience.
well, like you said, the camera is always moving as well, isn't it? Which is quite surprising with this.
When you think about it, we're talking about animation here. It's like, ready, right, one frame, right, move, 3. It's like, and you've got this film that was 2 hours, 2.5 hours long, or whatever it was, and then you can go into this. We get introduced to Sebastian J. Cricket, who is I did like this idea that he's writing his memoirs. So he holds up in a tree, and it's like, oh, he's there to write his memoirs, and it's Ewan McGregor doing the narration to the film as well as, you know, Sebastian J. Cricket.
Yeah, and much like the original story, the Pinocchio one, I've read today that in the original 1883 one, the cricket gets squashed straight away and is barely in the actual story, and it was only in the Disney one where they actually kind of brought, you know, the cricket in as that narrator audience kind of member,
as his conscience.
Yeah. For me, like this film, what quite surprised me was a lot of the marketing around this film was that it was like a more authentic take on Pinocchio, a darker take on Pinocchio as well.
Certainly darker.
You know and love. Yeah, absolutely. But I thought it was almost like a not a shot-for-shot remake of anything else previous or like a complete adaptation of the book. But I was surprised, Smith, where you've just said it was the original was written in 1884. I thought the Italian fascism and the First World War and all that stuff was part of the original story, and they'd put this in, and obviously they hadn't been able to do so previously because it's supposed to be a family film. I didn't realise that all came from the writers, essentially their imagination, and was just used as like a plot device.
Same. Actually, when watching the film, like I thought, oh, this must be the original take on it, because it is so
like the Donkey Island being replaced by essentially going to like a child training camp to become soldiers essentially, and I was really surprised by that, and sort of mentioning like the Jiminy Cricket character, which becomes Ewan McGregor's cricket character in this. I feel like there's kind of a lot less charm to the character. He's not really as much involved. He doesn't stay with Pinocchio throughout the film, and it was just like I just think the whole approach, it was just a very interesting take.
Excuse me, can I help you? This is my home we're talking about. May I ask, who on earth are you?
On Earth, a guardian. I care for the little things, the forgotten things, the lost ones.
Well, I am Sebastian J. Cricket, homeowner, and I have every right to be consulted about your schemes and machinations regarding my property.
Well, since you already live in the heart of the wooden boy, perhaps you can help me.
Help you what?
To watch over him, guide him, to be
Just going
good.
back to the point about like the technical marvel, I think that's without doubt.
Yeah.
And certainly the characters as well in the film, especially the two gods, I guess, that will come on to sort of grant the wishes. You can see like Del Toro's influence in that.
Oh, totally.
Like the Pan's Labyrinth, like is obviously the kind of big comparison, but even the stuff he did for Hellboy or other films that have those fantasy elements.
I think
it's
even
right there.
on the characters, actually, I think it's worth pointing out straight away that, you know, like Geppetto, in the original, like you watch the Tom Hanks one, he's like this kind of jolly, rosy-cheeked kind of Disney character. In this version, he's a dark twist on Geppetto. He's an alcoholic. His beard is rough. The puppetry looks dark, and it looks like they're badly done. And I think, again, watching this documentary, that was one thing that Del Toro said when they started making the puppets, that they look too good, because when you first make a puppet it looks amazing, and he's like, they look too good, you need to make them look like haggard.
But that's the thing I really loved about the visuals of this movie, and that scene in particular when he creates Pinocchio. I wrote in my notes, the end result, Pinocchio that isn't one of love, but he builds Pinocchio out of frustration and anger at the loss of his son. That's what I wrote on my notes. And the scene where he's building him is, I got like Frankenstein vibes, because you got the lightning. He's like, you got the shadows on the wall. It's you know, you may as well just like throw a lever to put a bunch of electricity into the wooden child. But I love the fact that Pinocchio isn't, you know, you see they do a great job of showing how good Geppetto is as a carpenter, and then the way he builds Pinocchio, like I say, it's out of rage, out of frustration, out of anger. And Pinocchio is a really imperfect creation, like in terms of what Geppetto probably could have made. Like, which you see in the original Disney film, it's like this perfect little puppet. What I love about this one, he's like twisted. He's got
there's only one here. He doesn't get round to carving the other one. He's like, I'll finish you tomorrow, doesn't he?
And a perfect piece of character design, I think, is the hole in the tree that he creates it from, is where, you know, is used as like the heart, which I thought was like a really nice kind of visual touch. And that's obviously where Sebastian J. Cricket ends up going in to become like, I'm still going to live inside you and act as your conscience. And yeah, like you say, the appearance of they call it a wood sprite, the blue fairy. And I loved her design, because I was like, you know it's coming, because you know the story of Pinocchio. And I was like, oh, what's Del Toro going to do? Is it like it's going to be some disfigured monster like, Rrr? And I thought it was a really beautiful design. I was like, wow, that is really gorgeous.
It starts out like it's just 2 wings, doesn't it? Or 4 wings even, and just opens up. And there's other like little like floating eyes as well that come out from the forest.
They become like, if you look at the wings, they're all these. But you say creepy, but I found it's a really kind of. There's a
creepy for kids.
Yeah, but I think there's a great warmth to that character design. Like it's almost like like Egyptian godlike. There's something very.
It made me feel very Miyazaki, like that kind of studio.
Yes, that's
style.
A great shout.
Yeah.
There's a great Miyazaki kind of touch to it. But yeah, I really kind of like those opening scenes and the creation of Pinocchio. And then we get, like, you know, Smith said, then we get into the usual Pinocchio story. You say usual, but with with this kind of Italy fascism kind of thing that, like the circus thing kind of happened in the original, like the Disney one, but it wasn't quite to that extent, was it?
Ah, we have found him, our star. Everyone shall love you and call your name Pinocchio. Pinocchio!
I can't remember from the original film. Like, I know Geppetto. I think Geppetto had a son, but I can't remember. Like, that died previously. Is that something that happens in the original ones? Like,
he definitely did have a son, but I don't think you ever see.
We don't see the
death, you certainly don't see the death.
No, we don't
because
see the death.
that is the most shocking thing when you open to this film.
It's almost like that kind of upstart to a film where it's like it's trying to sort of tug on the heartstrings, where you've got this beautiful relationship,
yeah,
and then it comes crashing down, and then you're left with a shell of a man who literally creates a shell.
A great comparison.
And I mean, in this one, so in the original Pinocchio, it was all about Pinocchio trying to, be a real boy, find love, become who he wants to be.
When we say original,
sorry, the 40s one, because that is my
Disney
reference,
cartoon.
really.
But I would agree.
In this one, it's not. It's about everybody else around him. Like Geppetto, for instance, he's the one going on the journey more than Pinocchio is, and the other characters around him. Whereas I think the original one was more kind of Pinocchio's the 1940s one was more Pinocchio's journey in that sense. Obviously, Pinocchio goes on a journey, but he's always just living, in the shadow of Carlo. But he doesn't. His character doesn't change that much in this film.
No.
Yeah, you're right. And when he first comes out, he's a bit of a dick, isn't he, Pinocchio?
Yeah.
Bit of a dick. He's just like, I'm really overexcited and doing all this stuff. And it's just like, God, he's a bit much, isn't he? And that was my initial reaction to him. And for me as well, like you say, he doesn't change that much through the story. When does him and Geppetto get close? Because it seems like
that's right.
Happen.
No, not really.
The weird thing was the story seemed to rely on you having seen the original Pinocchio and understanding those character relationships. Like, we don't see that relationship really between Sebastian J. Cricket and Pinocchio as his conscience. I never felt that. I never felt that connection.
No.
And yet, at the end of the film, he's like, "Well, I was Pinocchio's conscience," and it's like, I didn't get that. And like you say, Nige, the Pinocchio Geppetto connection. He at one point he's like, go away, and it's really well done and everything. And then it's like, oh no, he's gone. I better go and find him. And it's like, where was that moment where I couldn't understand. Maybe because you're dealing with a character going through grief. But
I think that's it. Yeah, I think his take on it is it seemed to be less about that. It seemed to be more about the getting over the grief and the death rather than than Pinocchio and that new bond. Although obviously Geppetto, he does like go looking for him, doesn't he? Gets like swallowed by the whale, like albeit a much different whale. But
I'm with Nige.
But no, you're right. He doesn't. Yeah, you kind of like why is he doing it? Yeah, because
I felt like a scene might have been cut out or was missing. It just seemed
like I say, I wonder if it does kind of expect you to understand that relationship from the other film. From the I'm going back to the original Disney film.
But I don't know why, because everything else is kind of like removed enough. Why he would do that? Because he's trying to be so far away from the original film, like with little hints to the original film, but not.
I do love. I will say, like the. I love the setting. I love the fascist dictatorship background.
Mussolini.
Mussolini is like when I thought, are they going to actually show Mussolini? And they do such a caricature of him. It's like, oh yeah, Mussolini was, if you read enough about him, was quite the monster. And
although physically they have him as like 4 foot tall when he was short, but he wasn't that short. So as you say, that caricature, yeah.
It's like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with Napoleon.
Yes.
It's like, oh, he was short. Let's make him short and a spoilt child. It's that kind of thing. So yeah, and I thought the story with oh my goodness, Christoph Waltz's character,
Count Volpe.
Again, it feels really weirdly paced. You have the Count arrive, and we know how this part of the story is going to go. Kind of takes him off. And then that seems to get resolved very quickly. And then I don't know.
There's a bit where Geppetto gives Pinocchio the book that he so lovingly treasured. His son had, and he gives it to Pinocchio, and Pinocchio kind of is supposed to go to school, the classic, ends up going off with these circus guys, and the book gets trashed, and Geppetto picks it up and he's like, oh my god, you trashed the book, which again you would think is another dagger between the relationship between those two. And it's not long after that Geppetto goes off and tries to rescue him, and again it's like, well, maybe it'd just be like, I'm not going to bother, go be in the circus, is fun.
Count thingy, just on that character, Count what, sorry? Darkula.
Count
Darkula.
Yeah.
Count. In the original puppetry, they had him as this massive, big, beefy-looking character. They went away. They made the puppet, like the you know, all the animatronics. They spent weeks and weeks and weeks on this thing, and Guillermo del Toro didn't like him because he didn't want him to appear like this big bruising thing. So actually in the story, this character is one of the, like, just people in the background, and you can, if you go back and watch the film,
wow.
they just use him in the circus, but not as, you know, not as obviously the Count, who was like thin.
It's like you see, there's a character in the circus who's like this really big dude with like a bit of facial hair. Was that supposed to be the Count? That would not have worked. He's too. Yeah, you need the Count to be like kind of like snidey, creepy, weird, thin, not like a big beefy dude. Yeah, wow, that was a really good decision. Good work, Del Toro. You need my I love the praise fact, after winning an Oscar.
I love the fact. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but you know, the Count has got that really long nose. Obviously, he's lying to Pinocchio about everything. You know, I mean, it's a small thing, but I liked that little thing. Obviously, Pinocchio. When he lies as well. I remember in you know, the original, where in the Disney one, and it's just like beep beep beep, and in this it's quite
the way it grows
violent, and it feels like it's going to hurt him, even though he's made of wood.
Isn't there a bit in the original Pinocchio where his nose grows and it gets so long, and like a little bird in a net?
Bird's nest, bird's nest.
So it is literally a cartoon, but it's quite cartoony and cool in that fashion. But you're right, in this one it's a lot more brutal. The branches come out really big. There's sort of branches coming off the main trunk, essentially.
They had an axe and they wanted chocolate. Hot chocolate.
Pinocchio, you shouldn't lie to me. I am your papa.
But I'm telling the truth.
Then why is your nose growing?
It's not.
Lies, lies and more lies.
I am not lying!
The one thing I really liked about this movie was how they really lent into the whole immortality thing, and the idea that, and I did like that part of Pinocchio's character where it's like, I can't die, and it's like, oh wow, because now you kind of give him even less responsibility. But I really liked the fact that he was almost like a god character, and I really liked that. So at one point in the film, Pinocchio is killed, air quotes, and he meets the wood sprite who brought him to life. He meets the wood sprite's sister. I don't think literal sister, but kind of, you know, the afterlife, kind of like the guardian of the afterlife. And she says, you can come back as many times, but each time you come back, you're going to be held here a little longer, which they kind of try to play into the last time.
I think that's the rules for Laser Quest. If you get shot out of the game.
That is the rules for Laser Quest.
Very similar. It was loosely based on Laser Quest, this film.
Laser Quest, yeah. Pinocchio Laser Quest.
Because I've definitely been in rooms where there's like, is it like, what are those things playing cards? Is it cats or penguins? I can't even remember.
No, they're rabbits.
Rabbits, yeah. I often see rabbits playing cards when I go laser questing.
Oh,
it becomes that whole bit where he goes like down into this like, sand underworld. Like, for me, like, it's weird actually. I didn't really like that part of it. I quite liked.
I thought it was quite creative.
I thought that was like my favourite.
I liked the characters and stuff, but then it became like quite repetitive that he just kept dying and going down there.
Hello?
The wooden boy with the borrowed soul. While you may have eternal life, your loved ones, they do not. You never know how long you have with someone until they're gone.
Basically, Pinocchio ends up in this army training camp, and they're all like young, very young, almost like a bit too young boys.
They look,
and it's like
Ron Perlman plays the dad, doesn't he? And he takes them all there, and obviously he's very enamoured with the fact Pinocchio can be a super soldier because he can never die.
He can never die, and he's very down on his own son, like treats him like garbage, and. But there's one really sweet scene where it's they're going to bed, the kids, and these Pinocchio and his little friend Candlewick. I think that's the kid's name. He's got the little bit of,
from as you said, Stranger Things.
When they have like this little chat as they're getting ready to go to sleep, and it's like a really sweet moment. You kind of get a part of reflection on Pinocchio, and it's one of the few times in the movie where Pinocchio actually feels like a less intense character on screen. He feels a little bit more okay. Now I'm feeling this character a little more. The following day they have this training exercise, and It's about getting a flag, and Pinocchio and Candlewick are on opposing teams, and they race up and they both grab the flag at the same time. They return to the Candlewick's father, who's in charge of this army camp, and they're like, "We got the flag," and he's like, "Which one of you got it?" And it's like, "No, we both won the flag."
Yeah.
And the father's like, "No, only one of you can win it." And obviously he wants his son to win, so he hands his son a gun and says, "Shoot Pinocchio."
Candlewick. Shoot the puppet.
And I actually thought he was going to in this part of the film, because I thought, oh, they're going to basically play up that Pinocchio can't trust anyone. But the kid, Candlewick, is like, I can't do it. I won't do it. And the father's like, pushes him to the ground, and I think he's pointing the gun at his son. And then just so happens there's I guess you'd call them the Allies, are flying over, dropping bombs. And obviously, as we said, this takes place around World War II. They drop the bomb and it lands right on the father.
The other thing we should talk about is the music as well. So obviously in the original Disney version, you've got the very well-known songs, in Pinocchio.
Me down to make me fret or make me frown. I hit strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me.
And in this film, we don't have any of those, but we have a lot of original music, which is much more downplayed and much more.
I don't remember any of them.
I can't. I remember them. They're quite cinematic.
What to do with it?
It sings at 6 o'clock.
But also, the instruments that they use are all wooden, so they're flute and clarinet and stuff like that, which they obviously did on purpose.
I don't think it needed any songs.
I was surprised.
When I did like the running joke of Sebastian trying to do his song, "My Father," and then the door would open and crash him. Or there's one bit when he's on the ship and he's like, "My Father," and the whale swallows him. And then at the very end, during the end credits, he's like, "Right, I'm going to sing my song now." But it
is something that I don't think it needed it either. I mean, there were some which happen, but they're not necessarily like, "Hey, look at me!" Like, musical. They weren't musical, which worked okay. But yeah, when it kind of broke out into song, it did feel odd, despite them being incredibly well written and.
Yeah, oh no doubt. But it felt like it was a movie that didn't need songs, because it's not like exactly, I don't know what Del Toro's opinion of this movie is, but this isn't exactly a movie that's, as a parent, what are you going to show your kid? Like the fun, joyous original Pinocchio, or this kind of one where there's like Pinocchio gets shot and killed and run over. Yeah. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I grew up watching Watership Down as a kid, which is one of the most terrifying kids films ever made. Would always be shown at Christmas. But yeah, I just think like this film didn't need those songs, and I feel like those songs put in to appeal to kids. I'm not saying like music is always put into films to appeal to kids, but it didn't need these songs.
Who is this film aimed
I think
at?
I think that was the biggest thing for me watching this film. I was confused at times, like what I was watching. I was, some moments it was quite light and like, but then it was really dark, and then you got the music, and I wasn't sure if this was all for me, like you say. I also felt like it felt a bit long.
It was definitely,
and it shouldn't be for any, like not any, but for
it's the longest stop motion film ever made. So, but is that because of the technical challenges or
indulgence, or the story was just a bit too long? Like we've said, there's no taking away from how incredible that all looks, but story wise, like sometimes, like when he goes off to war, I was like, wait a minute, like, or he's getting prepped for war. I was like, man, do we need this? Do we need this extra layer? Isn't this about Geppetto and him? But like you both said, it's not. And I think that's where I started to lose some of the kind of desire to kind of really enjoy this film because of that.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. It's the final act of this movie, like the end of it. Like, so we have the Wales thing, and they escape from the whale.
The whale football team with Gareth.
Yeah, the Welsh
Brendan Fraser. That's the whale.
that's just mean. So the final act I thought was really, really beautiful, where you get that kind of narration from Sebastian. He tells the story. He's like, Geppetto one day passed away, and he goes, and one day so did I, and so Sebastian passed away, and he kind of is still narrating from the afterlife. And he's like, and Pinocchio put me in a matchbox and always carries me with him. And I wrote down the two last lines of the film, which I thought were really lovely. He's like, Pinocchio ventured into the world, and the world embraced him back. And then I thought this is a really, for a kids' film, not sure. Well, if this was aimed at kids, a kid probably wouldn't. Yeah, well, I don't think a kid would understand the final line, because it is quite wonderfully bleak, but also it's quite beautiful. He says, "What happens, and then we are gone." And it's like, yeah, that's really kind of beautiful, but oh my god, like, and then we get like, oh, it's the funny end scene where Sebastian's going to sing.
Guide him to be good.
Stop that! Don't hurt him anymore!
You may have no strength, but I control you.
Del Toro said himself, like, this is not a kid's movie,
right?
But it's a family film. It is a PG as well, so it's not like they've said, oh, it's for ages at a certain point. So yeah, but I think there is that kind of challenge of like, who is this film aimed for? I think there's a huge difference between an audience that sees this film and it's their first taste of what Pinocchio is, and one from sort of any generation, I suppose, prior to this that potentially have seen the Disney one, or have seen, I remember there was like a Pinocchio cartoon that used to be on kids' TV, Pinocchio.
I remember that.
Like, that spells Pinocchio. He talks like racking his brain.
No, I'm thinking it was a Japanese cartoon, I think, that was like dubbed by the Saban company. I think if it's the same one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
But regardless, everyone's got different experiences. I think as a first one to Pinocchio, this could probably be something that is extremely memorable, has like moments that will make you gasp, moments that, as you said, like from an aesthetic perspective are like spellbinding. But for people that are kind of very, very familiar with that story, I don't think it necessarily offers anything new. It's like the review we did for the Batman, the Robert Pattinson one. I just have to ask the question, why? Why has this film been made? Why has the Disney live-action one with Tom Hanks and old Bobby Zemeckis been made?
I was going to say, Disney one is made out of financial gain. Disney are remaking all their animated films because they want to make money, and all that's proving is the original ones, the animated ones, 9 times out of 10 were better. With this, to my knowledge, from what little I know of Del Toro, he's a filmmaker. So I can imagine he just wanted to make a Pinocchio film. I don't think there would be any kind of... I couldn't throw any cynicism towards him for making this. Like you say, why? And I agree. Like, even you could argue the Batman would have been made with financial gain and, what can we do next with this franchise? Whereas, Del Toro is not looking to turn this into a franchise, although I'm sure, various toy companies will soon be making statues.
No, you can tell that this is a story that he felt that he needed to tell, an interpretation of it that was not exactly the same. But then you do ask the question, well, if he's doing that, why has he still got the whale in there and the circus? Why is he still kind of harping back to that? So there are some kind of contrasting.
I think he wanted that core, didn't he? The core of the original literary tale, which includes those elements, but wanted his own sort of fresh take on it. It's difficult to find lots of trivia for this film. I mentioned a couple of things. Obviously, the Kate Blanchett playing the monkey, the fact it's the longest running length. But this could have been a completely different thing. Like, the original director that was attached to this before Del Toro got involved was actually Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh, wow.
So it could have been completely different. And in terms of voice actors, we know that it's an all-star cast, but others that were considered at various points but had to drop out due to scheduling included Christopher Walken, which would have, God knows who he'd have played, Daniel Radcliffe, and also Tom Waits as well.
Tom Waits?
Man.
So there you go.
Good trivia.
But they did not, and here we are.
I've got one final bit of trivia, actually. So when they're doing like the stop motion and stuff, one of the things that Del Toro wanted was the mistakes. He wanted to simulate mistakes so that, for instance, if you walk into a room something will fall off the door, or you go back and shut the door, or something like that, because obviously...
So human behaviour.
Yeah, exactly, human behaviour, and he wanted it to feel real because of those reasons, whereas in stop motion, obviously you're making something, you can make it as polished without those mistakes, so he added those simulations in to make it feel as authentic as it does, and a lot of them you won't even notice, like someone, like dropping a scarf or something like that, but tiny little things like that, really nice touches, because like we said right at the beginning, that is the best, in my opinion. I'll go straight into it. That is the best thing about the film for me, is the kind of technical aspect of the stop motion and the set design, especially because obviously the stop motion only works if you've got incredible sets behind that, and the settings that they've made are just incredible. I think the original songs and score, I kind of agreed with you guys on that. Like, for me, they were fine, but didn't really need to be there. I like the fact that he does a twist on the story, but I like the original Pinocchio, and I'd go back and watch that, and that a big part of that is nostalgia as a kid. I also agree that it should be half an hour shorter. Would I watch it again? I kind of would, out of interest, but for me the story just, it goes all over the place, and like when he, I didn't care enough. I cared a lot about Geppetto's grief and the death and the stuff that he goes through. But like you've both really well pointed out, like the two of those characters coming together doesn't really happen very much. And for that reason, I don't know if this is harsh or not. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
I can totally understand that. And I think, as you said, like adding those mistakes and the realism to stop motion animation is really, really challenging. And I've heard... basically, I can't wait till they do the next Wallace and Gromit and we get to see Wallace taking a dump as part of the film. So that's something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
Right, speaking of taking a dump, am I going to take a dump on this film? Well, my partner, who watched this with me, just a couple of quotes whilst we were sitting there watching it together. She said, so we mentioned obviously the musical side of this film. Now, Helen is famously, at least famously to me, not a huge fan of animation, and she's also not a huge fan of musicals. So combine those two things, and she said, I'm just going to go on my phone when they're singing, as I'm not interested in that. So that was her perspective right there. Enough. And I explained to her, obviously, the technical marvel, the fact they put so much effort in, like, for stop motion all the way through, wasn't like cheaper CGI, or maybe it's more expensive, but either way, it's not kind of got that same endeavour to create this. And her reply to that was, and I quote,
"Shut up.
What a waste of human effort." So that was her take.
Wow.
So she was very, very scathing. I was less scathing of this film in the sense of, like we've kind of discussed already, like it's unbelievable to look at. Like, as a technical achievement, it's a technical achievement. If I was rating it just on that, it'd be a 9 or a 10 out of 10, because it's just easily unbelievable. But the story, I was bored. I almost fell asleep during this film. Like, I just had no real interest. It never really engaged with me. Critically, it's a smash. It's like most magazines or reviews are giving it
really well.
8 out of 10 kind of minimum. But for me, it was nowhere near that. I thought that some of the character voices were miscast, as I mentioned right at the start. Christopher Waltz, it just didn't work with that character at all. The relationship between Geppetto and Pinocchio just wasn't there. Never came. And all of a sudden he's doing all these like crazy things in his life. He's gone from an alcoholic to a person chasing this child to the ends of the earth. For what? You just don't understand why. And like it's so hard to separate kind of like my feeling about the film, my enjoyment of the film, the fact that I am certain I will never go back and watch this film again. What was that, as Etok said in the intro once? But,
that was about Nomadland, because I listened to that today.
There you go. It's not quite at that level. But yeah, for me, I just didn't really enjoy it very much. But bizarrely, I'm going to end up pretty much where Smith did and give it a 6 out of 10 because of the technical achievement, because of that kind of heart behind it, that in the opening couple of scenes, it's there. Like, it really does kind of suck you in, and then it doesn't finish you off.
Smith.
Oh dear. But yeah, 6 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I'm just going to go over the exact same ground as you guys are. Visually, the film is breathtaking. It's an incredible feat. I would love to see more movies like this. Maybe even imagine a sequel to Top Gun 3, but in stop motion.
Rocky
like a little
7.
A little Rocky. Yeah, you could make films with aging actors. You could do another Rocky film. Creed 4 could be like this. Actually, we've got to go and see Creed 3 in a few months. We've got to do that. So, yeah, I would love to see more movies like this. But, yeah, and like Nige said, and I completely agree, if you were just rating technical achievement alone, 9 or 10 easily, because it's fantastic. But the weakest part of the movies, the writing, and some of the acting as well. I've got to say this, we talked about the lack of relationship between. Imagine, where's Geppetto Sebastian's relationship in this movie? It's just he never questions where this little guy's come from, or it doesn't feel like he has a conversation or a connection. Yeah. But the voice acting, the child actor. Look, I get you hire child actors for their authenticity and stuff, but it was just it became so great. When he becomes Pinocchio, it's just, I'm so happy, Father. I'm going to be over here now doing this thing. What is that, Father? It's just I need this to stop. It's giving me a headache. And Ewan McGregor, like I said at the beginning of this, I joked that it just sounds like he's talking because it doesn't sound like he's acting. And maybe that's because he's a great actor and he doesn't have to put any effort in. But it just sounds like, I'm Ewan McGregor, I'm a cricket, and I'm just doing this now. And it's just where's the majesty? Where's the magic? Where's the fact that you're playing a bloody cricket? And Nige said, he mentioned earlier, there's a lack of visual appeal about Sebastian as well. There's just, you don't look at Sebastian and see a personality. It's just like a little creature. And I get it's a Del Toro style, but I feel like Sebastian as the conscience, which is something we don't see in the movie, needed to be more, looks like a character you could connect with or something. But yeah, like you guys, visually an amazing film, story wise very lacking, far too long. Could have trimmed 45 minutes to an hour off this movie. I gave it a 5 out of 10.
I think with Ewan McGregor as well, just when he's good, he's really good. When he's bad, God, he's awful. So
that's a what? There's our podcast for Ewan McGregor in a nutshell.
And what do you guys think? Pinocchio, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Oh yeah, we've got a YouTube channel as well. So you can find exclusive. We do now. I forgot to tell you.
I convinced Smith to.
Yeah. So yeah, you can find us on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description down below with exclusive trailers and episodes. And
but my face is going to be blurred out because I've not signed off on this at all.
That's such a good point.
No, it's just going to be my face.